Good evening. My name is Margaret Egan from Urbanism and Landscape. My colleague Richard Jolly is here with me this evening as well. We'd like to thank the Irish Walled Towns Network for inviting us to speak this evening. The purpose of our seminar is to present what we as consultants in landscape architecture and urban design can bring to developing plans and policies and strategies for improving public spaces, whether they be in urban or rural areas. The most recent ones in Dublin were a study of the public realm in the grounds of Dublin Castle, which needs an awful lot of work and has been pretty neglected for quite some time. It was a very, very interesting study that we could have kept going on for months with, because you kept digging deeper and deeper and found more interesting layers of information about the space. We do an awful lot of work in the kind of historic core of Dublin city centre in Temple Bar. We worked on the Heart of Dublin public realm plan for the whole of the city centre, which was published last year for Dublin City Council. The Abbey Leaks community plan, a sustainable community plan, was undertaken back in 2011 by Ott. Okay, the Abbey League Sustainable Community Plan was undertaken by Urbanism and Landscape in 2011. This particular plan is of relevance, we feel, to Kells in terms of its urban fabric and its location within County Meath, its historical heritage, its cultural heritage, its proximity to various environmentally sensitive areas, its relationship with its local topography and landscape environs. After I present the Abbey Leaks plan, I want to talk you through another project that we undertook, the Liberties Greening Strategy in 2014 for Dublin City Council, and followed through with a more focused project, Weaver Park, that we undertook in between 2015 and 2017. It was just finished on site there in October. So the Abbey Leaks plan was undertaken with Conor Norton of Loci, an urban designer, and Blockman and Marr architects. The purpose of the study was to develop a sustainable community plan in conjunction with the local community and business groups and resident groups in Abbey Leaks. So obviously it was undertaken with Laois County Council, the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht, the Abbey Leaks Business and Community Development Forum. To start off with, next slide please. In terms of the context of Abbey Leaks, an 18th century planned town which had been moved from its former location along the marshes of the river. A fantastic architectural heritage. To date it still retains its urban form and fabric. A very beautiful place, but has been impacted hugely over the years by traffic, particularly HGVs moving through it. That was resolved somewhat by the M8 opening, which took some of the traffic out of the town centre. But still, a lot of HGVs still do move through it, and it had a huge impact on the quality of the public realm in the town. The roads themselves were congested, it was making for unsafe pedestrian environment. Unsafe cycling environments, and just the fumes and just the general air quality within the town was quite poor. So I suppose within Abbey Leaks town itself, there's the marketplace, which is like the main kind of focal point of the town centre, the main commercial area. The residential areas are concentrated around like Stucker Hill, New Road, Balladreen Row and Ballinackill Row. The basic layout, as I said, has remained unchanged, and the relationship of that town still retains its relationship with the former estate landscape and its pastoral setting. Now, the scope and the purpose of the community plan was to build on positive aspects of the town's natural setting and topography, to build links to the wider landscape and environs, and to build on its natural and built heritage, and to create an attractive place to live, work and visit. And I think those three things are key. A town has to be a nice place to live, a comfortable place to live, an interesting place to live, and also to work. But then if you want to encourage local businesses to invest more in their properties or just to set up. People want to be able to visit and, enjoy that space, and there has to be a reason to come to the place. So the main objectives of the Sustainable Community Plan were to establish a shared vision for the future of Abbeyleix and future generations, and to set out policies, projects and practical guidance on the management and enhancement of the public realm, and also the management and enhancement of its architectural heritage. Now, within the scope and the purpose of the project, quality of life for residents was a huge issue. Enhancing the town's economic potential in terms of tourism development was also highlighted as a key issue. To provide guidelines for development of similar plans in other areas in County Leitch. So really we were kind of developing a template that could be used in towns of a similar scale and size locally. The challenges to local businesses they identified, number one was the congestion, vacancy within the town, dereliction, high unemployment, unsafe pedestrian and cycle routes, or lack of connection between all these wonderful open spaces around the periphery of the town itself. So in order to get everybody's ideas together, the first workshop was organised in conjunction with Laois County Council, and this was very much a dual process where everybody came and they actually put their ideas physically down on paper, and so it was a visual kind of demonstration of thoughts as well as written word being used to explain what people wanted out of the Sustainable Community Plan. Structured interviews were also held with the Abbeyleix Business and Community Forum and various other committees like the Bog Committee, the Tiny Towns Committee, the Laois Partnership, and very selected members. As part of the workshops, the various groups, which meant about 5 to 7 people per group, they identified the positive features in the town and how these can be improved, and also identified negative features and how these could be resolved. And they also helped to identify key projects with the potential to actually transform Abbeyleix itself. The results were really kind of broken down, I suppose, into identifying positive, negative aspects that were considered key to the local community. One of the highlights or more important points that came out of the workshops was the strength of the local community and local organisations, and that sense of community, and that people felt that together, if they worked together closely, they could achieve quite a lot. The importance of the quality of the local amenities, the heritage assets, the surrounding landscapes were all considered very strong, elements that needed to be enhanced to improve the public realm locally. And a desire for all of these to be kind of consolidated and enhanced, but on a plan, a visual plan to actually pull all these elements together and see what could actually happen. The main concerns for the groups involved in the workshops were depopulation of the town centre, vacancy, the viability of the town centre, businesses and shops, lack of broadband, lack of walking, cycling opportunities, lack of local employment opportunities, water quality issues, traffic and parking issues, habitat loss, lack of open space, play facilities within the town centre itself, particularly for young families. In order to address the negative aspects that were raised, the suggestions were to focus on encouraging greater residential occupation back in the town centre, the reuse of vacant properties, to start looking at disabled access, better signage and wayfinding. That will all come under kind of branding and marketing for Abbeyleix town. Improved car parking facilities, traffic calming measures, reducing the HGVs and travelling through the town centre, and trying to get them out of the town centre altogether. Improving the pedestrian environment, and improving, obviously, again, the walking and the cycling routes kept coming up. And stimulating local businesses, local food production, and local food markets, particularly at the weekends, and also looking at the potential for festivals and tourism. And I think all these elements tend to be repeated in all the studies that we do, particularly workshopping with local communities and businesses. I think, road widening schemes in the 70s and 80s had a huge impact on a lot of towns around the country. And then with the development of suburban shopping centres and local businesses basically not being able to viably operate within a town centre, and all that business moving away and the town centre dying slowly. And it's kind of true to an awful lot of towns all over the country, really. On top of all these particular issues, the groups identified particular projects that they would like to see progressed or possibly, happen within a 5 to 10 year period. One was a tourism information centre, another was a bog interpretive centre, reuse of the former railway line for walking and cycling, a new enterprise centre, a cinema, tourism promotion and tourism opportunities. So all of these elements were brought together, and the issues and opportunities that were raised in the workshop were collated by the project team, and all these recommendations and strategies were put on paper and collated into the key issues, and the fine projects were kind of fine-tuned down. So there was non-spatial projects and actions with non-spatial implications such as branding and marketing, and then there was projects with spatial implications in terms of actually physical projects that could be designed in terms of public realm improvement, heritage buildings, tourism, economic viability. So all of these ideas were put together, and in the meantime, while all of this was going on, Art and our team went out and undertook studies of the actual built and natural landscape, a physical walkabout, desktop studies, a review of all the various sources of material and historical context, landscape context and character, natural heritage, land use, public open space, access, movement and urban form. And they're all quite key in terms of physically looking at maps and understanding how a town has developed and how the place works and how it could be improved and what routes are there and how they can all be connected, and looking at the real positives and how it could all be enhanced and brought together on plan that's legible for people to understand, that people can tune into and just say, okay, well, we could see this happen and this is viable, and you develop I suppose a short and medium and long term kind of recommendations, what could be done in the next 1 to 3 years, in between 1 and 5 years, in between 1 and 10 years, what kind of budgets are you going to need for these things to happen? They might be local initiatives, some of them might need public funding, others may need public-private partnership funding for them to happen. So all this information was collated and a draft document was put together that involved the actual written policies and strategies, as well as some mapping of key projects within Abbey Lakes itself. So we workshopped again all these various elements, and it was very positive meeting. We thought we'd have a third or fourth consultation meeting with the local community and businesses, but we managed to refine the document in the second workshop because there had been so much involvement in it, I think, So there was, let me see, can we move on to, this one here. This over here. There was the positive social aspects that people identified that I've gone through there, like all the, the community groups, community spirit services, pride of place, low crime, deprivation, the local youth centre, the health centre, the strategic location, heritage assets, positive environmental aspects like the park, the bog, the sensory garden, all that wonderful outdoor, all the beautiful landscape elements that lie in close proximity to Abbey Lakes. And then there was the list of negatives was just as, nearly as long as the list of positives, but that's quite good because that's why we were there to help them distill, what are the negatives and what can we do to turn these into positives as such. Could I have the next slide, please? So, in order for a sustainable community to exist, you need a community, an economy, and a place. And those three elements are very, very important. And the community needs to be inclusive and fair, needs to be healthy, have a wide range of public and private and community services. It needs to be, aware and involved about what's going on locally with various groups, and it has to have a strong identity. And a strong, flourishing economy is essential. It has to be diverse. There has to be a range of, economies and services to attract people in and people to want to come into the town and shop. It has to be integrated and well-branded. Well-branded is an essential, not only in terms of economy, but in terms of a space generally. And each town has its own identity and its own culture, and you have to develop that in order to create a brand. It's like a logo that you will immediately identify with that place. And the place itself has to have a strong character, strong sense of place, local identity and character. It has to be attractive. It has to be a good quality public realm. Has to be environmentally sensitive. Has to be sustainable. It has to be well connected, like good transport, public transport, cycling, pedestrian networks. There has to be a choice for people, not just the car. There has to be other ways for people to be able. Okay, so basically all these projects were identified, the key projects that were the high and the medium ranking. The community projects, let me see some examples there on undertaking civic infrastructure audit, reserve land for expansion, existing sports facilities, under economy, undertaking the town centre health check, aligning the town with high quality locally sourced artisan food projects, under place and environment, consideration reclassification of the N77 to facilitate axle ban, which is quite important, undertaking a town energy audit and protecting existing plot subdivisions. Could I have the next slide, please? Thanks. I'll just quickly run through these. There was 4 projects, key projects that were identified. One was the present, looking at vacant plots and the depth of these plots and how infill may be used to actually encourage people to move back into the town to live above, ground floor retail units. And start looking at, plots, vacant plots and land adjacent to the town centre that could be used as infill development to try and kind of consolidate Abbey Leaks as you're bringing the energy back into the town itself. Could we have the next slide, please? The Market Square, looking at widening footpaths, decreasing vehicular movement, re-looking at loading bays, disabled access, just bringing more vitality back into the town centre. Next slide, please. The walking loops, this is where we went out and we walked, the whole entire site and looked at it in a broader sense through mapping and developed these loop walks and a variety of loop walks that would suit different types of users. Next slide, please. This is the northern bookend. This is like the northern end of the town as such, but it's also, a key point when you're entering and exit into the town. It's quite a bit of a traffic junction. It's dominated by traffic, some tree planting, but there was a lot of scope for improving the public realm here. Can I have the next slide, please? The Southern Gateway, again, very simple interventions of widening the verges, some wildflower meadow planting, native tree and hedgerow planting. Access routes into the town are very, very important, just the first impression. And when you come in and it's dismal and there's unpainted walls and just, no thought has gone in to these places and there's signage everywhere and advertising everywhere, it just doesn't really, it's not an attractive introduction to a place. And very simple interventions can change that without a huge amount of financial investment either. This is Ballymedine. Again, some very simple interventions to enhance the stream that was there. Some wildflower meadow planting with custom-owned pathways. Again, very simple planting, very simple interventions, but it could actually change, the image of the town as you enter into it. Next slide, please. I know we're going over time, but I just would like quickly just to go through some of these projects. The Liberties Greening Strategy we undertook with Dublin City Council back in 2014. This project was undertaken right in probably the depths of the recession, and the Celtic Tiger had gone, and the council had very little money, but they wanted to invest in a study to see what could be done in the Liberties, socially deprived area for quite some time. Very, very interesting place, very, very old part of Dublin, a name that is recognised everywhere really. Next slide, please. It has a very, very small footprint of open space throughout the boundary area. We worked with on this project with Margaret Egan and Associates. So we basically undertook a study, walked within the whole site and identified vacant sites, opportunities for developing small pocket parks, opportunities for families. 70% of the population of the Liberties live in apartments. So we identified pocket parks where everybody didn't have to move more than 5 to 8 minutes to actually get to a park to play. Next slide, please. So this is just some mapping that we undertook of the existing public spaces that exist within the Liberties area. Patrick's Park being the main public park, which has minimum amount of facilities. Can I have the next slide, please? Thanks. We assessed all the tree cover within that site area as well, in terms of quality and species name, just to kind of get a database of what was there and what was suitable, what was growing, what wasn't. We analysed the landscape quality, areas of low visual amenity, barriers, industrial heritage, mixed use to active frontage. Next slide, please. Out of that analysis, we came up with basically a strategy to develop 2 new parks at Weaver Square, Bridgeford Street, civic spaces at a High Street in Newmarket, heritage green spaces at St. Odie, St. Catherine, St. Luke, St. James's and Thomas Appy, smaller pocket parks, allotments, community gardens, greenways, linking routes, and then implementing the local area plan. Next slide, please. So water quality and flooding, healing the derelict spaces and the vacant plots, and urban biodiversity were 3 key concepts that we needed to carry through in the actual plan. Sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. Weaver Park, which recently opened in October 2017. This was the first of the pilot projects we tendered and were successful. We worked with DBFL and numerous others, consultants on this particular project. We went through a process of workshopping, dealing with the local residents, local skate, boarding groups, local business groups, had a whole process of workshops. Next slide, please. And we developed all these various options for the park. Sorry, I went through that one already. St. Odians, that was Bernard Seymour, Newmarket Square. That one's at part 8 at the moment, or has just gone through part 8. Pimlico is another part of the Liberties, and we've come up. These are just kind of conceptual plans for improvements in public realm. Vicar Street. This is a playground behind Vicar Street. Centre, Pool Street, another just tarmac. There's, sad excuse for a Muga. We came up with a conceptual plan for improving that entire area there. Concepts for linking routes, street trees, rain gardens, planters, wayfinding, and integrating Dublin bikes along these routes as well. Next slide, please. Suggesting new trees, large, medium, small, depending on the scale of the streetscape and the urban grain. And these are just some examples of how we would adapt or choose the particular tree species depending on the tree or the street width. And all these projects that have come out were identified in the Liberties greening strategy. The first 5 there are at design planning or moving through to construction stage, and the bottom 3 have actually been completed. And we're currently undertaking a similar strategy in the northeastern inner city area. Basically, it's using the same model as the Liberties to identify all of these issues to come up with a plan and a strategy for developing parks and public spaces, and basically increasing and improving the local environment, public realm for the community. I could keep on going. Last shot. This is the Cork Street, the Weaver Park project. And could you just sorry? I think there's one more. There's probably 2 more. Is there one more? Yeah. Sorry, this could go on. Yeah, this was the various workshops that we did on the Weaver Park project, where we integrated a skate bowl and woodland planting and benches and just a load of different elements for a load of different users of the park, and it's just turned out fantastic. It's constantly packed, and this is just one park out of all the areas that we identified. And it's hugely popular, and people are moving through it and using different streets in a different way now. And there was just such an active community, and just a will for it to happen. And this wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. Okay, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for listening.